Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me.
In the sprawling expanse of the galactic sphere, humanity lived on the fringes. Alien civilizations, advanced, powerful, and arrogant, ruled the star systems with an iron grip. The Galactic Council, made up entirely of these alien species, controlled everything from trade to law enforcement. For centuries, humanity had been treated as second-class citizens. They were allowed to live in the shared residential zones, but they had no say in the governance of their worlds. No vote. No voice. Only survival. Dr. Emily Carter was not a politician. She had never intended to become a symbol of rebellion, nor had she ever dreamed of leading a movement. She was a scientist, one of the best in her field, specializing in sustainable energy solutions. But the galaxy had a way of pushing people into roles they weren't prepared for. And Emily was no exception. Her lab was quiet tonight, the only sound the soft hum of equipment running diagnostics on the latest prototype. A revolutionary energy source sat on her workstation, an innovation that had the potential to change everything. It wasn't just a scientific breakthrough, it was a beacon of hope for humanity. Emily knew what her discovery meant. In the hands of the Galactic Council, it would be used to fuel their war machines, to solidify their control over the star systems. But in the hands of the people, it could spark something far greater, freedom. As she adjusted the output on the energy core, the door to her lab slid open. Emily glanced up to see her closest friend and colleague, Jackson, step inside, his face a mixture of concern and excitement. "Is it ready?" he asked, his voice low but filled with anticipation. Emily nodded, turning to face him fully. "It's stable. More efficient than anything we've ever seen before. This could power entire planets without depletion for centuries." Jackson leaned against the wall, folding his arms as he considered her words. "And you think this is going to change things? The Council won't just let you hand this over to the people, you know that." "I know," Emily said, her tone steady. "But it's not just about the technology anymore, is it? This is bigger than science. People are looking for a way to fight back, to reclaim some form of control over their lives. This could be the key." Jackson sighed, rubbing his hand through his hair. "You're talking about politics now, Emily. You're talking about revolution." "I'm talking about equality," she replied firmly. "The Alien Alliance has controlled everything for too long. They decide who gets power, who gets a say in their future. We've been living in the margins, Jackson. This is our chance to step out of the shadows." Jackson hesitated for a moment before pushing himself off the wall. "You know I've got your back, but this isn't going to be easy. They'll come after you." Emily met his gaze, her blue eyes unwavering. "I'm not afraid." The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken fears and the weight of what they were about to undertake. The truth was, Emily wasn't just going to present this energy breakthrough to the Galactic Council as a scientific proposal. She had a plan to spark a movement, a call for free elections. Humanity deserved a voice in the governance of the galactic sphere, and she intended to be that voice. Over the next few weeks, Emily's name spread through the human sectors like wildfire. Her proposal for the new energy revolution had captivated not just scientists, but the general population as well. People were starting to whisper her name in the dark alleys of overcrowded human settlements, in the factories and farms where they toiled for alien overlords. Emily Carter was becoming a symbol of hope, whether she wanted it or not. The Galactic Council, however, was less than pleased. The ruling alien species, led by the imposing Zalarian Empire, viewed her proposal as a threat to their carefully constructed power dynamics. For years, they had kept humanity under control, relegating them to the edges of the star system, forcing them to rely on the Council for survival. Emily's discovery had the potential to change all that. As the Council convened to discuss her proposal, Emily stood in the grand hall, dwarfed by the towering alien figures that surrounded her. The Zolarian Chancellor, a cold and calculating being named Chorek, watched her with narrowed eyes. "Dr. Carter," Chorek's voice echoed through the chamber, his tone dripping with condescension. "Your proposal is intriguing. However, it seems to carry certain implications that could disrupt the delicate balance of our society." Emily remained calm, her hands clasped in front of her. "My discovery isn't just about energy, Chancellor. It's about progress. It's about giving every species the tools they need to thrive, including humans." There was a murmur of discontent among the alien delegates. The notion of human equality was a bitter pill for many of them to swallow. Humans, after all, had long been seen as inferior, weak, incapable of true governance. "You speak of equality," Chorek said, his voice hardening. "Yet you are aware that your species has been granted the privilege of living within the galactic sphere, despite your shortcomings. To suggest that humans deserve the same rights as our esteemed species is ambitious." Emily's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to back down. "Ambition is what drives progress, Chancellor. And progress is what the galactic sphere needs if we're to survive the challenges ahead." Chorek's eyes narrowed further. "You overstep, Dr. Carter. Be mindful of your place." But Emily had no intention of backing down. This was the moment. The moment that would define not just her future, but the future of her entire species. "I propose a vote," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "A free election. Let the people, humans and aliens alike, decide whether they want to embrace this new future." The chamber fell silent. The idea of a free election, where humans would have a voice equal to that of the alien species, was unheard of. For centuries, the Council had maintained strict control over who held power. To allow humans, of all species, a say in the governance of the galactic sphere was a dangerous precedent. Chorek's lips curled into a sneer. "You dare to suggest that we hand over power to the masses? You risk destabilizing the very foundation of our society, Dr. Carter." "Or perhaps I'm offering a chance to strengthen it," Emily countered. "A society where every species, no matter how small, has a voice. Isn't that what true progress looks like?" The chamber erupted into chaos. Alien delegates shouted in their native tongues, some in outrage, others in tentative support. Emily stood her ground, refusing to let the overwhelming noise drown her out. The Chancellor's voice cut through the din. "Enough." Chorek glared at Emily, his eyes filled with contempt. "You have made your point, Dr. Carter. But understand this, your actions will have consequences. We will not allow this rebellion to disrupt the peace of the galactic sphere." With that, the meeting was adjourned. But the seed had been planted. Emily's call for free elections had set off a chain reaction. Across the star systems, humans began to rally behind her cause, demanding representation in the Galactic Council. Protests erupted in the human sectors, peaceful demonstrations calling for equality and the right to vote. The Alien Alliance, particularly the Zolarian Empire, responded with force. Curfews were imposed, protests were violently suppressed, and human leaders were arrested. But the more the Council tried to silence them, the stronger the movement became. Emily, now a figurehead of the revolution, worked tirelessly with her team to organize a peaceful campaign. With Jackson by her side, she held rallies, debates, and discussions, not just with humans, but with alien species who sympathized with the cause. The message was simple: equality through peaceful progress. As the election day approached, tensions were at an all-time high. The council did everything in their power to sabotage the movement. Propaganda filled the airwaves, depicting Emily as a dangerous radical who sought to destroy the harmony of the galactic sphere. Despite the relentless smear campaigns and intimidation tactics, the movement continued to gain momentum. Emily could feel the energy building as election day loomed closer. What had started as a spark of hope had grown into a galaxy-wide call for change. People from all walks of life were joining the fight, and not just humans. There were alien species, long marginalized by the Zolarian-controlled council, who saw in Emily's vision a future where they, too, could thrive. The rallies were growing larger by the day, and with each one, the risks increased. Emily and her team moved cautiously, aware that the Zolarian forces were keeping a close eye on them. But they couldn't afford to stop now. They were too close. One evening, just days before the election, Emily sat in a small meeting room with Jackson and several key members of her campaign. The dim lighting reflected the gravity of the situation. Jackson, always the realist, was running through the latest intel on the council's tactics. "They're planning something big," Jackson said, tapping his tablet, which displayed a map of the star systems. "The Zolarians are deploying more military forces around the human sectors. They claim it's for peacekeeping during the election, but we all know what that means." Emily leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. The stakes had never been higher. If the Zolarian forces intervened violently, the peaceful revolution she'd worked so hard to build could unravel in an instant. But she couldn't let fear dictate their next move. "We have to stay the course," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "If we react with aggression, we give them exactly what they want. This movement is built on peace. We can't afford to lose sight of that now." Jackson nodded, though concern was etched in his features. "We'll increase security at the polling stations, make sure there's as much visibility as possible. The more eyes on this election, the harder it'll be for them to pull anything without the entire galaxy knowing." Emily's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a distant explosion. The room fell silent, every set of eyes turning toward the window. From the streets outside, the sounds of chaos were rising: shouts, sirens, and the unmistakable rumble of heavy military vehicles. Jackson jumped to his feet. "They're not waiting for the election. It's starting now." Emily's heart raced. The Zolarians had moved faster than she anticipated. This was an all-out attempt to crush the movement before the people could cast their votes. She hurried to the window and looked out over the city. Smoke was rising from several blocks away, and the streets were filled with people, some protesting, others running for cover. "We need to get to the people," Emily said, turning to Jackson and the others. "We can't let them believe that all is lost. Not now." Jackson grabbed his jacket, already moving toward the door. "I'll get our team to the safe house. We can still broadcast from there." But Emily wasn't thinking about safety. She was thinking about the thousands of people in the streets, the people who had put their trust in her, who had believed in the possibility of change. She couldn't abandon them now. "I'm going to the rally," Emily said, her voice resolute. Jackson spun around, his face a mask of disbelief. "Are you crazy? The streets are a war zone. You'll be arrested, or worse. If I hide, then everything we've worked for crumbles," Emily shot back. They need to see me out there. They need to know we're not giving up." There was a tense silence. Jackson's jaw tightened, but he knew better than to argue. Emily had made her choice, and there was no talking her out of it. "Fine," he said, his voice sharp. "But I'm going with you." Together, they rushed out of the building, the sounds of chaos growing louder with each step. As they reached the main square where the rally had been planned, Emily saw the crowd, thousands of people, standing their ground despite the military presence. Zolarian forces had set up barricades, and armed soldiers were patrolling the perimeter, their faces hidden behind sleek, emotionless helmets. Emily pushed through the crowd, making her way toward the front. People recognized her immediately, and a ripple of murmurs spread through the masses. She could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on her, but she stood tall, refusing to let fear take hold. As she climbed onto the makeshift stage, a hush fell over the crowd. The soldiers watched her closely, their weapons at the ready. Emily took a deep breath, the gravity of the moment settling over her. "We are here for one reason," she began, her voice clear and steady. "To demand the right to be heard. To demand the right to choose our own future. They want to silence us, but we will not be silenced." The crowd roared in response, their voices rising in unison. Emily's heart swelled with pride. This was the power of unity. The Zolarian forces may have had the weapons, but the people had something far stronger. "Hope. We stand together," Emily continued, her voice growing louder with each word. "We stand for equality, for freedom, and for the future of every person in the galactic sphere, human and alien alike. We will not back down, no matter what they throw at us." The crowd surged with energy, their cheers echoing off the buildings. Emily could feel the momentum building, a tidal wave of change that was impossible to stop, but then, without warning, the soldiers moved. A line of Zolarian enforcers stepped forward, raising their weapons toward the crowd. The people froze, fear rippling through the masses. Emily stood her ground, locking eyes with the lead officer. This was it. The moment of truth. She raised her hands, signaling for the crowd to stay calm. "We are peaceful," she called out, her voice firm but steady. "We are here to vote, not to fight." The tension was unbearable. For a long moment, no one moved. The soldiers stood poised, ready to strike, and the crowd waited, breathless, for what would come next. Then, in a moment that felt like an eternity, the lead officer lowered his weapon. One by one, the other soldiers followed suit. The crowd erupted into cheers, the relief palpable. The soldiers stepped back, retreating behind their barricades, allowing the rally to continue peacefully. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. They had done it. They had stood their ground, and the Zolarian forces had backed down. As the rally continued, Emily spoke with renewed hope. The people were with her, and no amount of force could take that away. The election was just days away, and she knew that no matter what happened, they had already won something far greater than a seat on the council. They had won the right to be heard. In the days that followed, the tension in the star system reached a fever pitch. The Zolarian Empire ramped up their efforts to discredit Emily's movement, flooding the media with propaganda and launching cyber attacks on their communication networks. But it didn't matter. The people had seen the truth, and they weren't going back. Election day arrived, and the polls were flooded with voters. Humans and alien allies alike came out in droves, eager to cast their ballots for a future that included everyone. The council watched in stunned silence as the votes poured in, unable to stop the wave of change that had been set in motion. When the results were announced, it was clear, Emily Carter had won. She had been elected as the first human representative on the Galactic Council. The victory was more than just a political milestone, it was a symbol of hope for all species in the galactic sphere who had been denied their rights for too long. As Emily stood before the Galactic Council, delivering her inaugural address, she knew that this was only the beginning. The fight for equality was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had a seat at the table. And with that seat came the power to shape the future.